took a long time, I think almost a year, 2 years, before this film finally hit theaters. I mean, and of course it lands in the middle of a pandemic when, most people don't want to attempt to go into a movie. So it just seems like this poor film has been shackled with some bad luck. So if you don't know the history of this film, as best I can understand, so this film, The New Mutants, is of course one of the many offshoots of the XMen franchise. New Mutants, Excalibur, X-Factor, X-Force, Generation X was one. So it's one of those many offshoots that sprung up around the years. And as the main X-Men continuity in terms of the films was ending, and I think they all knew it was ending. This is before the Disney buyout. 20th Century Fox decided they were going to, they'd had some success branching off from the main X-Men continuity with things like Deadpool. So they said, well, let's try it again. Only this time, let's go like a horror movie route, but with X-Men characters. And pretty interesting idea, really, when you think about it. Getting out of the Bryan Singer aesthetic and, doing something different with the characters. Maybe not something that's faithful to the comic books, but, still something you can do with these characters. So yeah, they did, and then it was slated to come out, and then it got pushed back, and then the Disney buyout happened, and nobody knew what they were going to do with this movie, and finally it's out. And so the question that we have to ask before we get into anything else is, after all this time and this poor movie being tossed around like a flask at a biker bar, the question you got to ask is it worth it? Which is a hard question to answer, because unless you're something like the Avengers, it's never going to be worth the entire wait. But is it still worth it given everything that's going on with this poor little movie? And the answer is, yeah, pretty much. They actually turned out a pretty interesting and enjoyable film. Not a great one by any stretch, but especially when you measure it up against the other X-Men movies, this is actually a lot better than the last couple of those that came out. So all right, let's talk about it. So, this movie takes a bunch of secondary X-Men characters who literally were in a comic called The New Mutants, like, I think back in the 70s, I think is when New Mutants came out. But a bunch of secondary X-Men characters, Wolfbane, Cannonball, Magic, Sunspot, and I'm missing one. Danielle Moonstar, the lead of the movie, of course, takes these characters and drops them into your typical horror movie mental asylum, where, of course, everything is spooky, where they've all been brought kind of against their will. There's no way out. They're being kept there by portals and whatnot that the lead doctor is casting. And the movie's point of view character is Danielle Moonstar, whose village was destroyed by some kind of monster or something, and she wakes up in this asylum. She's there with the other mutants. There's no other guards. There's just them and the doctor, it seems. And from the moment she gets there, weird things start happening, scary things. The other mutants are starting to see things, and and all of this shit. And on top of that, they're trying to figure out who the doctor is and why they're being kept there, why they're not being allowed to leave, and, so on and so forth. So, right away, I just think they made a lot of smart decisions with this movie. I think right away, casting it in completely different tone and genre and even mindset than any of the originals had. Of course, the great the great power fantasy of the X-Men is that some wonderful Captain Picard guy is going to come and tell you that you're special and wonderful, and you can go live in a mansion and learn to be a superhero. And this movie takes the complete opposite track. And like, what if you weren't found by a wonderful surrogate father? What if you were found by somebody with a little bit more malevolent agenda? I think it also takes advantage of something that I think it's overlooked a lot in the comics, or it's not overlooked, but I don't think they ever explore it fully. Superheroes, Marvel superheroes especially, and the X-Men most definitely, all of their origin stories are trauma-based. You know, why else would spurn you to go be a hero? You know, there's got to be something you're trying to avenge, or something you're trying to fight for, or something to that effect. And the X-Men definitely have had that in spades. I can't think of any X-Men origin where the mutant suddenly has their mutant powers manifest and everything goes great and there's absolutely no problems. No, in all the comics, all of these folks have like some kind of trauma in their background, which is used to give them drama and motivation to move on and become, Storm, Wolverine, Cyclops, whomever. And this movie says, let's take a closer look at that, and let's look at the concept of trauma, of childhood trauma, using this kind of fantastical setting and these people, mutant powers kind of being the allegory for puberty and, difference and, and again, traumatic experiences. It says, let's make the entire movie about these young people dealing with trauma. Because really, at the heart of it, that is what is going on. I'm going to play spoiler here, so if you don't want to know kind of what's going on, plug your ears and go la 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 la, or whatever. So what it turns out is that Danielle Moonstar's power, her mutant ability, is kind of, without knowing it, she telepathically links with people and can manifest their worst fears. So all of the characters are reliving the worst moments of their life, the trauma that happened when their powers kind of manifested. And again, making that the centerpiece of the movie is now they have to overcome that. And I think that's just really clever, in my opinion. I think it does something we haven't seen in a superhero movie and a Marvel movie, or Marvel-related characters especially. I think it's also trying to have it both ways. It's trying to be a separate entity from the X-Men movies, but it keeps trying to reference them and be connected to that old Fox continuity. There's several shots that I believe were actually pulled right from Logan, if I recognize them correctly. And the evil and the corporation that is overseeing all this, the Doctor keeps mentioning her superior, and the mutants think it's Professor X, but obviously we know different. It turns out to be Essex Corps, which they mention in Days of Future Past, I believe, and I think in an early draft, Essex Corps was supposed to be the agency that was chasing Logan and Laura in Logan. And for those who aren't up on X-Men continuity, Nathaniel Essex is the real name of X-Men villain Mr. Sinister. One of my personal favorite X-Men villains, actually. And I kept hoping we were going to get him in one of those movies, and we never did. So, but given how well some of the other characters made out, it's probably for the better. I think that's a good place to talk about the characters, and I think what makes this movie work is not just an interesting group of new characters that the audience is not as familiar with. Kind of the same thing that made The Gifted, the TV show, work, is they didn't bind themselves down by saying we have to have some recognizable character. That, Wolverine doesn't need to pop up and make a cameo. Oh, look, it's young Jean Grey or something. No, let's stick to characters who are kind of on the the B list of X-Men characters. And because of that, I think they're able to have more freedom in what they do with these characters. They don't have to stick directly to, what the comics say. For instance, I don't believe, as far as I remember, I don't believe Wolfsbane and Danny Moonstar were ever in a lesbian relationship. But they are here, and it's a good one. It's a good relationship that works and services the story. So I think they picked some interesting characters to be the centerpiece of this movie, and they get really good young actors to play them. I looked at all of their IMDb's, and with the exception, of course, of Maisie Williams, I don't know any of them. The guy playing Cannonball, I believe, was on Stranger Things. I think he may be the main kid from that, but I don't know for a fact. The chick playing Magic was the surviving girl from Split, I believe. So they've all done stuff. But with the exception of Maisie Williams, nothing that I've really seen or can really identify them from. And it's a good, solid cast. Not just are they a good cast having fun with the characters they're playing, but their chemistry together works very well. As I said, the chemistry with Maisie Williams as Wolfbane and the young lady playing Danny Moonstar is phenomenal. It's very natural and very real, and I think it's a strong relationship that's developed throughout the picture. On that, I just gotta say, I think Maisie Williams really has grown into a really fantastic actor. This is a character very different from Arya Stark, so she's not kind of playing the same type, which would be very easy. And I think it's going to be a challenge for her because it doesn't look like she's going to get much taller. So she's always going to be a short, young-looking actor, and she's always going to have to kind of fight for those roles that aren't little girls or teenagers. So it's always going to be a challenge for her, I think. But she really has the talent to pull it off. She's the anchor of this film. The actor playing Danny Moonstar is the lead, and she's our point of view character. But really, Maisie Williams as Wolfbane is the character that really drives everything, and she's the linchpin. Not just because she's the most famous of them, but I think because she's the best actor out of all of them. She's the linchpin that holds everything together. This isn't to say that the other actors are bad. The other actors are very good. I also like that they kind of use the genre that they've chosen, this kind of pseudo-horror movie thing, to their advantage, and give the New Mutants kind of your typical brat pack, archetypes, so that the audience is, can easily identify who is who, and then they allow, the subtext to expand the characters, but using the standard, really, this almost looks like a scary brat pack, and I think that was a smart move, and they all kind of fit into, you've got the preppy and the good old boy and the bitch and the sweet girl, so they're all very, they all play with the archetype very well, and they do interesting things with the characters. I will say the actor playing Magic, Split Girl, I think she went a little bit overboard. She was very 80s bitchy. She's the typical bitchy mean girl. If you've ever seen any 80s movie, any 90s movie, or any movie set in an asylum, as a matter of fact, there's always that bitchy girl right when the new person comes in. Oh, new girl, you're never going to get along here. And of course, we discover her trauma is the darkest of all, kind of thing. She's very good. The character's fun, but she is a bit over the top. I think if I have a complaint about this movie, see, the thing you gotta understand is that this is not a superhero movie. They have a big special effects extravaganza. They have a big, a monster they're fighting, but that's not what it is about. It's a character piece. Like I said, it's a film dealing with the topic of trauma and childhood trauma specifically within the confines of this very, very fantastical X-Men universe. So trying to actually ground the X-Men in some kind of emotional and mental reality. Kind of like Logan tried to do. So I can't complain about, the action not being, huge and all this. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be about the inner journey, and I think they pull that off well. If I have a complaint about this movie, it's that some of the characters I don't feel get enough payoff. And specifically I feel like that really fell on Sunspot and Cannonball. And I'm using their superhero names, even though the movie never does. They're only referred to, Sam and Rain and Danny, Ileana and all that. So I'm using their superhero name just because that's what I'm used to. But Cannonball and Sunspot don't get kind of enough resolution to their trauma. I feel like Magic does. I feel like Danny definitely does, and Wolfsbane definitely does. But I feel like the two of them, it's just kind of implied that they got through their trauma. And that's something I find a problem with a lot of these superhero team movies, is that inevitably there's going to be some characters that don't get the screen time, the character work, or resolution that the others do. So there always feels like, at least especially with these X-Men, these Fox X-Men movies, or 20th Century Studios, fuck you. It always feels like you've got the team, but only a few of them get any kind of meat to their bones. And here they establish Cannonball and Sunspot really well, give them personalities, give them traumas, things they're working through, and yet there is no resolution. And I feel like that, I don't know, I think it would have been really easy to do, and they just didn't. So yeah, it's a hard thing to do when you're writing for that many characters, to give them all satisfying arcs, but, fucking Guardians of the Galaxy did it. All in all, I really enjoyed this movie. I was engaged in it. I thought it was entertaining. I thought the characters were great. I thought the actors playing them were great, and we're having a great time together. And what kind of makes you sad as you watch it is that that you're probably not going to get another one of these. Because the X-Men are going to find their way into the Marvel Cinematic Universe sooner rather than later. Fox didn't pay all that money, or Disney didn't pay all that money to buy Fox and then not do X-Men movies. And I don't think they're going to want to keep a whole other, side universe running. So it kind of makes you sad that this movie is good, but it has the potential to be great. And watching it, you think, okay, maybe, in number 2, now that we've established the characters, they can do more with them, but you realize that's probably not going to happen. But, on the other hand, I'm the guy that's always saying be satisfied with what you have and not always needing more. And I think what we ended up with is a solid film, good character piece, interesting use of the material, and overall, one of the more enjoyable things to be done with this franchise. And that's kind of sad that one of the most enjoyable things to be done with it is probably the last thing from that particular chapter of the franchise. It's kind of fitting when you really think about the X-Men movies and their rather fractured legacy. So let's wrap this up. And boy, am I excited to say this. Boy, am I excited to say this. Because boy, I have been handing out C's like it's an intro class taking an intro to theater test. An intro class taking an intro to theater class. That's wonderful how I work unscripted. But final grade for the New Mutants, I'm going a solid B. A solid B. I think it could have been better. I think there was more. I think they could have given the characters a little bit more, some of the characters more time. I think they could have pushed the horror movie aspect of it. If they wanted to go that route, I think they should have pushed it even further into that route. But all that being said, I think it was a good film. It was worth the wait, and I think if you enjoyed any of the others, or you've always kind of wanted to see something different done with a superhero movie than just kind of the same old, give this one a look. I think it's well worth the time. So, all right. So that was the New Mutants. Long time coming and worth the wait. So, thank you as always for joining us. Don't know when we'll do another brand new one of these. We'll see when the drive-in schedule is. But, you know, there's plenty of other content for drive home reviews out there. Please watch me. So yeah, we're getting through it. We're getting through it, folks. We can do this. So thanks a lot. And as always, drive safe. And I will see you at the movies.